Hello, everyone. I'm Becca, dietitian by trade, mom 24/7, wife from the start, and when there's a few extra hours in the day, you might find me hitting the trails or on horseback.
And I'm Kara, a therapist to women, a mom to a boy, an entrepreneur, mountain junkie, and a postpartum runner.
And this is Fit for a Queen, a podcast that's devoted to the female athlete wanting to balance the teeter-totter of all the things we desire out of life as women: performance, health, intellect, and taking time for self, even if we only get 1 minute out of the day.
We're so excited to be bringing you the queens in the athletic world who have done just that. Okay, ladies, take a seat at your thrones, grab your crowns, and welcome to Fit for a Queen. Welcome back, everyone, to Fit for a Queen. Today, I've got Courtney Wycoff with us. And let me tell you a little bit about Courtney. Courtney is a certified personal trainer and corrective exercise specialist. Her exposure to biomechanics and rehabilitative exercise started in her early childhood as an elite-level gymnast, kayaker, and ballet dancer. At age 16, she left home to pursue her professional career with the Houston Ballet, where she remained for 5 years until a severe ankle injury forced her to retire. After retire, she transitioned her focus and studied rehabilitative exercise and Pilates under the supervision of nationally renowned instructors Brian Peters and James Herron. She earned her certificate through the Pilates Method Alliance and became a top-rated trainer for the following 6 years. After suffering from injuries related to pregnancy and childbirth after the birth of her first child, Courtney became focused on working with pre- and postnatal women, developing intelligent strength training programs to meet mothers where they are, which led to the birth of Momma Strong. Courtney, welcome. Courtney, I want to tell the audience how I found out about you. I was on maternity leave and decided to listen to this summit on motherhood and birth, which maybe was not the best timing. But I was struggling postpartum. I was in a lot of pain. I was not bouncing back per se. And I heard your interview and you talked about your experience postpartum, and it really validated my experience, which I appreciated so much. So can you tell us, the audience, a little bit about your postpartum journey and how Momma Strong came about?
Sure. Hold on. We're going to exit a dog from the seat.
No, you're fine. This is awesome.
It's actually perfect because, my kids are all around and life is happening. So for me, postpartum, so my first child is about to turn 11, actually. And, so if I look back 11 years ago, at the time when I gave birth, I didn't really know that I was struggling. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about, is that as women, after we give birth, we really go into normalizing any level of discomfort that we feel, because A, we don't want anything to happen to our baby. B, we don't want, society or even close friends to know, because we're concerned about what happens there, Yeah. And then I think just personally, as an individual, we want to make everything normal. We want to be okay. And that's a really sticky spot. But I think that's where I was for a long period of time until my second child was born, was just normalizing pain, normalizing depression, making my new standard of living a little different than it should have been, not as high quality as it should have been. So I think that's a really important piece to say about my postpartum experiences. Now that I'm able to look back at it, I realize how much I was suffering.
Yeah.
And how much was going on that I wasn't really even aware of because of that experience. And that's the most important piece of it. So after my second was born, that's when I really started to see that I was dealing with serious injuries and also dealing with postpartum depression. So I was probably dealing with postpartum depression and injuries for 6 or 7 years before I started to get them treated. And still to this day, I think I'm still working on all of it.
It is a journey, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
I think you're right. We don't talk about that physical recovery after pregnancy and delivery and believe that pain or discomfort is just part of the process and that's how it goes. Or, we have to wait kind of 6 weeks before we go see a doctor. So what are some of the physical issues that come after having a baby and being pregnant? And I would love for you to talk about Momma Strong.
Okay. So there's a whole range of things. There's very normal experiences in terms of pain and discomfort that we all go through, right? Those are very typical things going on with your pelvis and the normal bleeding that happens and the normal discomfort that they tell you about. But I think a bigger piece that we're looking at is serious back pain, headaches, shoulder pain, joint pain in general. All these things start to happen. And those really, really signify something that is not normal. That starts to lead into like, okay, something's wrong with the whole system. And, we talk a lot and people hear a lot about diastasis recti, and that's usually the root cause of it. But I think there's more to it. I think women these days going into pregnancy are not strong in the right ways. So in general, their body isn't using the right muscles to support that. They're not using the right muscles to support pregnancy, but they're certainly not using the right muscles to support birth. So along with the typical injuries and pain patterns that we see related to just the stretching of your abdominals, there are then a bunch of other things that were probably pre-existing that then get exacerbated after you give birth. So, that's talking about joint pain and that's talking about back pain, which is significant. And most of us, like I was talking about before, we normalize back pain. We normalize joint pain as a part of aging or something that's, we have to get used to. And our bodies are so brilliant that we start to make that pain something that we can tolerate. Women in general that I work with one-on-one, when they come to me with joint pain or back pain, I'll ask them how long they've been suffering. And they'll say, 6-7 years. Wow. And when I talk to men, they're like, it's been 2 or 3 days.
That says so much, doesn't it?
And they always say the following statement. They're like, this just isn't right. And women, instead of saying this isn't right, say, I'm not doing something right. And so that's the piece that I'm really focused on in Momma Strong, is saying like, okay, here's normal pain patterns. Here are things to be expected after you give birth. Here's how we triage them quickly before they turn into other problems. And then here are the things that, signify something that maybe isn't normal, that was pre-existing before they had a baby, or that warrants some more attention. I can't tell you how many women have hernias who walk around for decades with a hernia.
Wow.
That is absurd because it affects your entire function from your head to your toes. So those things, I think, with Momma Strong are the things I try to highlight and say, the minute you start to feel pain, instead of thinking that something is wrong, or more importantly, that you are doing something wrong, listen to the pain and say, what is this? Be a detective, be a curious investigator of what's going on, and then bring it to the right people. It's a little tricky because we're in this phase of changing treatment for women after birth. And so we have a lot of medical professionals, OBs, and amazing physical therapists who are really rising to the occasion. But it's brand new, which is odd in 2017. Yeah. So we're in a bit of a transition right now where a lot of us didn't get the treatment we needed, and we're now having to fill in that gap until the standard of treatment goes up. So for women that are in the place that we're all in, it's really reaching out, oftentimes out of pocket, unfortunately, qualified individuals who are working in pelvic floor rehabilitation, OBs who are listening to you when you say, I have these pains going on, what can I do? Instead of telling you it's normal and it'll get better, we're seeking more and more professionals who are able to do it. So, things like Momma Strong help. It's what I can begin to make that available to women. That's why it's $2 a month, is because it's invaluable. Obviously, it should cost a lot more, but it is an invaluable service that all women should have immediately after they give birth, not 6 weeks after. They should have it immediately after they give birth.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're right. I think, I hope it's a changing field in terms of women and moms taking the time to take care of themselves. There's so much focus of on the baby after it gets here, obviously. And then especially as a new mom, you don't really know how, is this right? Or am I supposed to be feeling this way? So I really like that education of, okay, this is normal. This is not so much. What are some kind of treatment, or what are things that you focus on postpartum that can help with some of those issues?
I really focus on pelvic floor first.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of women are really good at, dealing with some of the issues in a typical way. So, you're good at kind of getting the abdominals back together, or stretching, or going back to yoga, or doing basic self-care. But what I'm really focused on is the pelvic floor. And it's for two reasons. One, for a functional reason. Your body can't perform if the pelvic floor is not integrated.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really the root of all of your movement, especially as a woman. And the body is so smart that if it senses that the pelvic floor is not integrated, it's going to start using other muscles instead. So it'll start using the hip flexors. It'll start using some back muscles. It'll start using some flexors in your shoulders. The body's so smart that it's like, oh, crap, this part of her body's not working. So what do I have available? And it will use the next best thing. And so when that happens, you then set yourself up for long-term pain. So if we go back and start at the pelvic floor and really focus functionally on pelvic floor first, not on performance, not on strengthening, not on anything like that, but is her pelvic floor awake? Is it resilient? And is it functioning in a way that is appropriate for her movement? There's a lot of women who can do Kegels for days, and that doesn't equal strength. That actually equals weakness over time. It's an overtoned pelvic floor. So we have to pay attention to that. Is the pelvic floor performing like a trampoline? Is it connecting to other muscles? Start there first.
Okay.
Then the other reason I focus on pelvic floor first in Momma Strong is, and I'll explain how we do that exactly, is a little bit deeper in terms of the human animal. So I think just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs focuses on applying psychology and things like that to people only when they have their basic needs met. You don't want to expect somebody to do amazing things in their life if they don't have food or shelter. So we focus on the food or shelter first, and then we deal with the other issues.
I love that.
The same thing goes for a woman. If you give birth and your pelvic floor is falling apart, and we don't address the pelvic floor, which is the root of the nervous system, that's where all of our movement comes from, and that's where all of our behavior comes from, right? If the pelvic floor is feeling unsafe, that woman, the animal in her, is going to feel unsafe as well, and is going to behave and move according to that. So, we can't expect women to even pull out of postpartum depression, move into the workforce in a way that feels good and is good for everybody, deal with older children, deal with relationships if her pelvic floor isn't integrated, because that base of her nervous system feels unsafe and it feels threatened. So that's kind of the two reasons why. And the way I teach that in Momma Strong is through a very specific bracing method that connects the deep abdominal muscles to the pelvic floor all in one movement. And so a woman will start with the most basic instruction for how to do that bracing, and then I move them through more dynamic movement until then suddenly they're doing 15 minutes of high intensity interval training that involves the pelvic floor too. So they just kind of take baby steps through each program until they're ready for the more advanced stuff.
I love that. And it's such a interesting concept. I mean, as a therapist, I know that our brain and body are connected, but going through that myself, it really is true how healing the body helps heal the mind too. So
moving away
I love
from
that.
such that conflicting message of no pain, no gain, which is ludicrous.
Yeah, right? It is ludicrous. It is so ludicrous. And most women I deal with have kind of been in that mentality for so long.
Absolutely. Right. Well, I am a sucker for empowering marketing and programs, and I love your mission statement. You guys have to go and check out the Momma Strong website. I love your website. But it's being committed to the business of enoughism, which is the belief that you don't need fixing. So tell us more about the Momma Strong fitness philosophy.
Yeah, so I really kind of stray away from words that involve curing or this feeling of needing to fix or bouncing back or getting your body back or things like that. Because I can't, and we can't as individuals, we can't control how our body looks necessarily all the time. We can't control how much progress we make. And we certainly can't put expectations in what that ends up looking like, what the product is. And so enoughism is all about the idea that as long as you're showing up every day in a way that feels good to you, that is all you need. That's going to be long-term healing at that point, and it's going to do really powerful things in your life. But when women go into this feeling of having to fix or having to, cure, or all these things that I get your body back, bounce back, they miss that opportunity of learning how to show up every day. So enoughism is saying, like, do the bare minimum. Life is so full of expectations and daily chaos that, it's terrible to offer one more thing to women that's asking them to show up in a way that's not feasible. So what's the bare minimum of showing up? What can you do that feels exactly enough in every department in your life? Tapping in one small way to all these areas, I think is important for women to do, and to really get away from anything that feels like it's going to change your life all of a sudden, kind of like the too good to be true moment, really focusing instead on moment to moment, day by day healing that you don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea if a woman in Alaska who just signed up is going to get the body back from high school. Like, I can't guarantee that.
Right.
But I can guarantee that she will heal her pelvic floor. And
Oh, there she is.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
You're like, I've done enough.
And I'm out. I'm not talking about the pelvic floor anymore today.
Mic drop.
Yes. So I don't know where I left off, but yeah, no. So enoughism is really the idea that, we put way too much on the plate of women. And we're not, and by doing that, we miss that we all deserve to have basic function in every part of our life. And most of us are so good at performing that we then miss the basic function. And that to me is the enough point. That's, are you functioning in a basic way first?
Yeah. I love that. We talk so much about our tribe here. That just is a theme of ours that keeps coming out, but between Becca and I. And I know you guys have an outreach part of Momma Strong. Can you talk a little bit about that? I love that aspect.
That is my most favorite part. First off, the group that gathers at Momma Strong are just exceptional. I don't love Facebook at all. And the Facebook group that is Momma Strong, it's a secret group. It's just phenomenal. So it's really taught me that when we base our interaction off of interest and things that are really who we are, we can develop really powerful communities even online. And so that's been a huge gift of Momma Strong. But the outreach program is, built off of my frustration with motivating women. And in that, for a long time when Momma Strong first started, I did the typical reward system that we're all taught when it comes to motivation, autonomy, mastery, all the stuff that we think gets us moving and grooving and showing up every day. But it still wasn't working. And I'm handing fitness over on a silver platter to women, $2 a month. It's different every day. It's me, I'm doing everything I can. And still only 11% of women were completing the programs. And that's a pretty typical number in the fitness world. And so I thought, okay, well, basically I'm servicing women who are already apt to get to their goals, right? That 11% number is the normal number of people who are going to make it through a program. And I'm still missing out on the other percentage. So how do I engage those people? So I started noticing that all the motivation books I was reading were written by men, and no offense, but it's just a different mindset. And I realized that what might be missing, who knows, is a relational aspect. Like, what if relational motivation is not a weakness? We typically think like autonomy and mastery are the things that we want. Is there something happening back there?
Just little people.
She's a cutie.
Okay, it's in my room. It's plugged in. I'm on a podcast. Let me finish it, okay?
Mama's almost done.
So what was I saying? So I thought, well, that doesn't, at the end of the day, that's usually not enough to get me on the mat, for 15 minutes, that's not going to do it. If I'm honest, like being a better mom, that's not going to get me on the mat, things like that. So what I decided was, well, what happens if I motivate them through relational aspects? So I created an outreach program called Share the Show Up. So as long as 60% of members show up each day for their workout, I then donate my time to women in need that day. And we're part of a bunch of agencies. In particular, I work with Harris County Jail, and I go and teach women in a group of different tanks. These are women who are incarcerated for prostitution, which is usually sex trafficking, since women who are in jail and pregnant, women who are suffering from substance abuse or mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And I go into these agencies and teach them stress relief and survival mode.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, since introducing that program, the completion rate went all the way up to 91%.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa. We want you out there, don't we?
Yes. Well, that, and I think at the end of the day, when for women, if I don't feel like showing up, and then in my head I go, well, if I do this, there's a greater good to it, then I'm going to do it. And they end up showing up. And that to me is probably the most powerful thing. And that is the other beautiful part of it, is that through the work I'm doing with these agencies, the women in the agencies get to see that they're not alone, that they have women all around the world who are just like them. And women who are participating in Momma Strong get to understand through my reporting that the women in the jail are no different than they are. They're struggling with the same pelvic floor issues. They're struggling with the same inability to show up. But the difference is that they have a different cushion for trouble. And they were born into a situation that socioeconomically is very different. And so they begin to have this compassion for others. And that creates this community or tribe, as you talk about, that is really solid and so important. For me, it's why I wake up every day and keep doing what I'm doing here. If it weren't for the members, I would have quit a long time ago.
Wow.
It's hard work.
No, that's amazing. What such a bigger goal that you're completing than you probably ever thought when you got this started.
Right.
Oh my God, yeah. You never know.
So, Courtney, we always like to wrap up our interviews with asking each person how they live out the Phit philosophy, which is how do you manage performance, health, intellect, and then that valuable time for self?
I'm going to probably be a little different. Some people will probably have better answers, but I'm going to opt to be really, really vulnerable and honest and say that the answer to that question is I don't know. I don't think women have adequate solutions yet. And I struggle every single day. And you can ask my kids, I don't know how to juggle all this, and I don't do it well. I feel pulled by the phone. I yell at my kids after a long business day. I'm not handling business stuff the way I want. I certainly don't take care of myself the way I want. And I think it's important that more dynamic women are saying this. Like, hey, I'm still showing up and I'm still doing it, but I haven't figured it out yet. And self-care is not that easy. I can go take a bath. I can do those small things. But when it comes to managing all the ways I'm pulled, I'm a mess. You know, it is not even like a pretty mess. It is a pretty disastrous mess. And I'm looking for solutions too, because this doesn't work. There's an end point to what I'm doing. And that's sad because I'm offering a great service to women and to the world. And I'm struggling with those things. So I think the more women like me talk about, there's a cat on my back. The more women talk about that and are really honest and not just saying, oh, well, I have to learn balance, or I have to, learn how to take a bath or turn off the phone. Like, that's not it. That's surface stuff. It's a much deeper thing that I think we need to come up with solutions for, which involves community services,
Amen.
which involves health, which involves men. How are we supporting men in the postpartum experience?
Absolutely.
Flex time. Being able to be off the phone as a business person. I have to start creating boundaries, and I don't know how to do it because it's difficult. And my business wouldn't survive if I wasn't accessible. So there's not a solution for me yet. And that is the truth. I don't think I have an answer other than I just show up and do it. And I try my best, and I learn along the way, and usually through massive failure. That's it.
Well, that's how we learn the best, right?
Yeah. And again, it's like those expectations of ourselves, like you said, showing up and getting through the day and, calling a day done is good enough. Yeah. And I love that. I love your honesty and vulnerability. So we appreciate that so much. Courtney, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Obviously, after you listen to this, I'm sure you'd love Courtney as much as we do. So please check out Momma Strong, mommastrong.com. Thanks so much, Courtney.
Thank you, guys. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Have fun.
Have a great day with your family.
Thank you to our sponsor today, Centimano Counseling. Centimano Counseling is the premier perinatal mental health practice in Kansas City, treating mood disorders during pregnancy and postpartum, perinatal loss, infertility, eating, and exercise disorders. Go to centimano.com for further information about the practice and services. For additional information on today's topic and guests, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fit for a Queen. And
Hashtag Fit for a Queen.
don't forget to rate us on iTunes. We can't wait for you to join us next time on Fit for a Queen.
Bye, Queen.